Welcome, faceless androids, cyber companions, and ghosts just in time for Halloween, to episode 491 of an Unearthly podcast, streaming live on October 24, 2023, and featuring the Fifth Doctor Adventures The Lost Resort, written by A.K. Benedict and starring Peter Davison as the Doctor, Sarah Sutton as Nissa, Janet Fielding as Tegan Jovanka, Matthew Waterhouse as the Ghost of Adric, and George Watkins as Mark. I am Bill Sylvia, the One in Black, and I have crossed over to the point that I am fully running on caffeine and sugar. With me are color commentator Alex Fireheart
So many androids, so little time.
and technical director Mad Matt Winchell.
Watch out, that caffeine going to take your big toe. Seriously, I think
Hey.
caffeine might be some of the reasons why I'm getting some of my foot cramps here and there.
Uh,
I drink too much Mountain Dew and it's like having gout.
I think I've been going to sleep early lately, so even the fact that I was awake at the time that we were meant to join the call required effort and caffeine, and now it's an hour past that, so I'm entirely awake only because of the Coke and Coca-Cola, not the other. No, don't clip that.
Cocaine's a hell of a drug.
Thank God we don't have a big enough audience to be clipping shit and sharing it as shorts.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Bill Sylvia is, in fact, Snowflake. The man runs on cocaine. Enjoy. Silence, so we can repose. I've now been hit up like twice now for different days I actually have off this week, and the first one I immediately had to turn down because it's the day I requested off. I requested off ahead of time a month ago because it's Trick or Treat Sunday. I missed out last year. You can kiss my ass if I'm going to miss it again. You're not taking my holiday away from me. Over my dead body. I got requested today if I could possibly come in on Saturday, to which my retort now has to be, since I checked in, actually, technically I have family stuff going on. We've actually delayed something for like 2-3 weeks. That's something being that a daughter of my mom's friend wants to go to a haunted house, but doesn't want to go alone. And this is actually a haunted house run by a person who used to run a haunted house in another town and has like really big reputation of being a really good one, at least when they were running it. So now they're running another one, so it's like, oh, so this ought to be, at least, even if it's on the cheap, still a decent quality one.
Right.
Excuse me. So I'm like, you know what? I haven't been to a haunted house in almost 20 years. I might as well. And like I said, we've pushed it back multiple weeks because of everything else going on, including me taking working last weekend as well. So I'm like, I worked the last weekend. I literally had a day off a week at best for like the last 2-3 weeks. I think I owe me a couple days off.
Fair, very fair.
Yeah. At this point I don't even care if it's only like 23 hours this week. I'm like, I need 2 days off just to like get off my feet and chill for a little bit.
It's
also
important to do that every once in a while. So.
And also, not to mention the holiday this weekend. So technically next week Tuesday, but yeah, that's gonna be interesting though too. So where I'm working at now, they actually not only allow people to dress up for Halloween, but they also let them dress up literally for like 3-4 days. in a row for Halloween.
Oh,
And they also like have a little thing online where they judge costumes, and whoever wins gets like a gift card for the store or whatever.
oh, nice.
So I'm gonna be doing my Jason Voorhees. Just because it's like the mask that has the most like sight range,
Mm-hmm.
and also because
Easier to work and use it in it.
yeah, easier to work. The pants and so forth are much more flexible and easier to work with. The mask has more sight range and better ventilation, especially if it's just the hockey mask. And also, even if I wear the coat in, not only could I end up being in the coolers half the time, anyways, but I could also easily remove the coat if I need to, and like hanging off a U-boat or whatever whenever I need a layer off.
Mm.
So it's not like I need to sit there and cook in something the entire time I'm at work either that day.
Right.
To which I also special ordered a hockey mask mom shirt, which is actually a licensed Friday the 13th shirt I got off of a 80s T website.
Okay.
They do more than 80s tees, but that's what their original claim to fame was, and they license everything officially. I've even gotten like Conan stuff and other things from them too. So yeah, I got that for my big Jason upgrade. Is I got I heart mom, but the heart is replaced with a hockey mask.
Nice.
Because if not, anybody who knows any lore about Jason knows he's his mama's boy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all I was planning for Halloween was I ordered a regular like button shirt that I could wear either in class or if I were teaching. But it's like Halloween themed. It's black and orange and has these white like spiders and spider webs on it. But I'm frustrated. I don't that I well, for one thing, I didn't realize it was shipping from China, so it took me forever to
Oh
get here.
Lord.
I did order it, on early enough to be before Halloween, but it's the cut of it is. I've noticed this with a lot of the relatively affordable shirts. My size is that they seem to assume that all men or all masculine born people have like skinny stomachs and big boobs or like wear a corset or I don't know, but I'm the exact opposite in that my chest, as especially of the past few years, is smaller than my gut. So if I buy from a big and tall site, it's fine. There's no problem. But if I buy from anywhere else, it's always a gamble. And this one is, yeah. There's a few buttons that I cannot button, even though I went the safe route and ordered the larger size that I normally order, and it still did not work out.
Shorter from my website. I should get a plaid shirt for my website, huh? And I actually sadly don't think they'll allow me to make that. They just want me to make like a whole logo and slap it on stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got 2 designs up on my Streamlabs store now, by the way.
Nice.
Excuse me. So I'm slowly building up the library of stuff in my online repertoire in different ways to make money. Although I only make like $3 per item.
That's more than nothing. And
True.
it's definitely better than the traditional route where you'd have to order 100 and keep it at your house until people bought them.
Well, I have to keep those things plastic wrapped at that rate. I'm trying to remember if there's anything else in particular. No, it's just the upcoming Halloween stuff. People requesting off last minute for the weekend. It's like, this is why we had to plan ahead a month. This is why they changed it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but this is exactly why. Because I've got plans. You can't always expect me to come in last minute every single time, especially when you've been doing it almost all month already. I need my weekend
Right.
off.
Mm.
As a matter of fact, I believe, yeah, I did over 30 hours last week, which means my paycheck this week is going to be a nice size one just in time for the bill to come in. So I'll be coasting this week.
Okay.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else, and other than the fact that we got a. Oh, that's right. I already shared that with. Actually, I don't know if I mentioned it or not. After I got my driver's license, I also got a full-fledged skeleton.
I don't think you
think you
mentioned it on
did,
the
yeah.
podcast.
I
I
don't
know
think-
you
yeah,
shared it
okay.
on Facebook.
Yeah.
So apparently, when my mother's friend was visiting, it's kind of interesting for them to try and slip in through the front door. Because the skeleton is hanging from the
Hold on.
hook and chain that holds the screen outside door.
I will say, when you say a full-fledged skeleton, it makes it sound like you got it like organically.
Yes, I got it
old fa-
organically.
the old-
Bill.
the
I
old-
took them
the
out to the
old-
woods.
The old-fashioned way.
Yes, with the meat cleaver. But yeah, it's apparently it's interesting for people to get in. Also, I had to order shoes because my shoes I've been wearing at work suddenly got like they were supposed to be these memory foam shoes. There's like a 2-inch long hole where the like pads of my foot would be landing.
Hmm.
Like there's not even a mess there. It's just gone down. There's like just this massive hole, and then it's like, no wonder my feet have throbbing pains last week or
Right.
so. You'd think that'd be a little more noticeable, like what that exact problem is, but there it is. So I had to get another pair of shoes yet again. I've only just had these shoes since the beginning of the month. Not buying
wow.
shoes from Walmart anymore. That's for gosh dang
Yeah,
sure.
I wouldn't either.
F that. That's like the second pair that's been toast in 2 months or less. From buying from them. I'm done with that garbage. No way in heck. So I got those replaced, but I also made 2 orders from GamerSubs, hashtag not sponsored. And they both arrived the same day. One I bought because I went, oh my gosh, the tea is out. Because they've been, there's been some people pointing out the thought process at GamerSubs said that they're actually gonna, since the flavored powder is already tea based, that they've been making talk about possibly actually doing real tea. So I ordered a black tea.
Okay.
And
So is that tea bags then, or?
actually, you pull out an envelope from the box, you tear the envelope open, and it's an actual fancy tea bag. And at the end where they have that little paper thing, it's just a GamerSubs logo.
Yeah.
Dunk it into 8 ounces of hot water and let it cook. And I added a little honey.
Mhm.
I think sugar is a little more effective than honey. And also, is creamer in tea a thing? I can't remember for sure.
It's done, but I've never like. I think what you're supposed to do is you finish steeping it, and then you add
Yeah.
the milk or creamer.
Yes.
I always did it in the wrong order, and it just ended up cloudy and tasting like shit. So I stopped trying.
Shame.
Speaking of tea, I've noticed it's very funny. I can go a year without using any tea, and then I get sick, and I go through all the tea in my cupboard in a week.
But yeah, I'm thinking of making the tea a morning thing now. I just use a half a bottle of water. That's the amount it asks for. It's 16.9, so it's actually a little more than what it's asking for. But yeah, I because I ordered the tea though. I ordered the tea and I ordered a non-caffeinated blood orange flavor, which I'll be trying eventually. The tea also came with one of their waifu cups, which I'm like, oh, I'll get that for free, sure, whatever. I'm not even sure if I'm going to pop it open or not. Then I get it and open the box. It came with the cup, and a sticker and a full colored coaster of the art and 4 sample flavors. I'm like, holy shit. I wasn't expecting half of this. What? So now I've got a waifu cup of a princess who's also a coaster and a black and white sticker that I'm not sure what to do with. But I also still have samples of, what's it, Meta Mango, Blowhole Blast, and Gamer Fart. Gamer Fart 9000. It's a lime and I believe strawberry is the flavor. And Blowhole Blast, which is basically like a tropical fruit punch. It's delicious. Both of them are. I haven't had the mango melon yet. I have the not mango melon, the mango meta. I have not had yet. I need to give it a go because I've been curious.
Are you sure you're not sponsored?
Nope. This is shiza that comes out my butt every like 2 to 3 months.
Right.
That's another $30 down each.
Alex, anything you want to share? Any updates?
Not really many. I mean, it's looking more and more likely that the person who got the job that I'd put my hand up for, who was a new person, probably won't be lasting too long.
Oh.
Because from what I was told, he has had several times where, like, the supervisor, like, because I was talking to her, like, the day I went back to work. So, like, literally the day after our last podcast.
Okay.
And, like, made it clear that it's like, I need full-time work as soon as I can get it. Because I just need money, especially now that I want to get the hell out of my hometown.
I need work so that I can quit.
Yeah. Well, that's the funny thing is she was saying that, like, where I want to move, they do have locations. Like the company that pays me directly
Okay.
does. So if I really wanted, I could try to transfer to a place down there.
That'd be good.
Which is good. It's good to know that is an option, because I was thinking I was just gonna have to make sure to not use any of my long service leave, which I should be qualifying for in January. And just not using any of it, and then when I leave, get all of it, so I would have money while I'm down there to live off of while I'm looking for work. But yeah, she was like she was kind of like, oh, I know you won't tell anyone who works here, but like, it's likely this guy isn't working out. That day he had left and he had to leave an hour early because he works another job, and they had effectively seemingly forced him to come in that day, even though he was ignoring their calls because he was working 8 to 4 at this job. And then on Saturday just gone, he went home sick for 4 hours into a 7.5 hour shift. So, it's like things had to be jiggered around and all that. And here I am on Monday. I actively, like, my supervisor got confused thinking that because 3 out of my 4 shifts every week are 11 till 3. My Monday shift is 10 till 2. She got confused and thought I was there until 3. So I clarified, it's like, so did you just need me to stay back an extra hour? Because I leave at 2. And she was just sort of like, can you stay until 3? And I was like, yeah. I was almost going to say, because I need the money. But I left that out because we were talking over radios. But yeah, it was just kind of like, well, I need the extra money, and I will get paid for working that extra hour. So fuck it, I'm willing to. So it's looking positive on my end, not so much on his. So there's a chance that because now that she knows, and she's usually the one that handles rosters, that I'm game to do it. if that job frees up soon, there's likely a chance that they'll just give it straight to me.
Mm.
I hope
Um,
Good
so.
luck on that.
Fingers crossed.
right. I
Yeah.
mean, fingers crossed. Knock on wood.
Mm.
I will say out of like the last 4 new people I've seen come into grocery by end, I think out of those 4, I've only seen 2 of them in the last week. So
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah. Between when I was sick and then came back for a couple of days and then went away again on a trip and then came back, I saw a lot of new faces. I think they're pretty much all part-time except for the one that ended up with the job that I was gunning for. But yeah, it was very like the turnaround's getting a lot quicker now, I'm noticing,
Hmm.
because yeah, I will say if I do get those full-time shifts, I'm not sure how long I'll keep them because I'm immediately going to start pouncing on them for illegally not giving us a half-hour break on for people who are there full-time working a full day. Like they are now entitled to paid lunches on weekends. So they cut a half hour back of the 8 hour shift and they're just paid for the full 7.5.
Mm.
But I go in to cover lunches and they've knocked all the lunches down to 20 minutes. That's illegal.
Hmm.
So I'm going to be having some words with them about that and being like, even if I like, I'll do it in a way that's like constructive and be like,
mm,
well, if you want to make it work, you can do this, and this. But like, I'm gonna be like, you are not. If I'm taking up those full time shifts, I'm taking a half-hour break because that's what I'm legally entitled to. I have not signed that away, so you know, either you can fire me and I can take you to court, or you can set this right. And like to be fair, there are a lot of people at work who will go on their like 10-minute breaks and come back like 15, 20 minutes later. So they've kind of fucked themselves over to a point, but it's still an illegal thing that they're doing
yeah.
Right.
anyway,
They
getting
can't.
rid of
They
half
can't
hour breaks.
get
So
away with that. Yeah.
yeah. So something is gonna have to change there.
All right. So let's go on to tonight's show. We have birthdays and news. We have some geek talk, and then will have Matt give us our episode summary. Then we'll have a review, final thoughts, and ratings. So we'll start with
Uh,
Alex with what birthdays we have for the day.
yep. Thankfully, uh, we did 2 weeks in a row, so there wasn't a big build up of birthdays. But yes. So starting on the 18th of October, we have Edward Brayshaw, who is the war chief in the war games, otherwise probably jokingly referred to as the proto master.
Not
Would have
wrong.
been 90, but died in 1990 at the age of 57. Um, on the 20th of October, we have Anarchy Wills, who played Polly from 1966 to 67, turned 82. And lastly, we have on the 22nd, Derek Jacobi, who played the Master in Scream of the Shalka and Utopia, as well as in some Big Finish stuff,
Mm-hmm.
turned 85.
I forgot he
So
was still alive, and I didn't write the sir. And then as you
yeah.
were saying it, I was like, oh shit, he's still
Hmm.
alive, so he's still supposed to have the sir.
Still alive, isn't he? Damn.
Yeah. But yeah, happy birthday to Edward, Anarchy, and Sir Derek. And I will quickly throw in, even though this is like briefly, because it doesn't really fall into stuff we would normally do. But I did see it reported earlier. I think it's a notable enough name that I can bring it up quickly, even though it's not sci-fi related or Doctor Who related, whatever. Um, that apparently the actor Richard Roundtree, who is mostly known for playing Shaft, apparently died either today or within the last couple
Oh.
days.
Dang.
So rest in peace to him and you know,
And that legacy, yeah.
Yeah.
mm,
Yeah, I had not heard that.
yeah. Yeah, like it's literally as we were starting, I saw it. So I was like, given I'm doing birthdays, I will quickly mention it.
Yeah. Fair
Because
cop.
it's a notable enough name, even though it doesn't fall into our usual criteria.
Yeah, doing quick refresh
All
to
right.
see if
Moving on from that to our Doctor Who news. It seems our 15th Doctor, Ncuti Gatwa, is doing a speed run of being the Doctor, and may may even be working to the point of finishing all of his filming before we actually see him. But as of yesterday, they started filming the 2025 series, so that would be series 15, which is his second. And I forget if he was. I forget if he was planning to do 2 or 3, but I know
I
there.
think it was. I think it was at least 2. I
Mm.
don't think he said it would only
I
be
don't think
2
there
so
was an
much
at
as
least
2 was
because
at least
I
committed
think
to.
he wanted to hurry up and get back, or like get back to theater,
Right,
unless he's
right.
planning to do a back and forth sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I
I
know I've
mean,
seen this. I think the general consensus is that's why they're filming for 2025
right.
already, is so that
Might
he
be.
can spend 2024 in the theater.
Yeah.
And if
It
he
would not.
spends 2024 in the theater, then I don't know what's going to happen in 2026.
Yeah, it's like it would not surprise me if it was both that and also just the fact because like initially I was like, bloody hell, that's like fairly early to be doing this, but at the same time, while I hadn't heard of him before he was announced as the Doctor, it's not like he had done nothing
Hmm.
notable. He had been in like at least 2 TV shows that have some acclaim
Right.
prior, so it was like he's not exactly a random guy that they just pulled off the street. So
Hmm.
you would probably have to work. There's potential scheduling to work around, whether it's for stage or even possibly other screen things he didn't want to give up.
Hmm.
Um,
Probably.
so yeah, if this is their way of getting around it, so he can do stuff, that makes the most sense. Especially because like this also as well, I could see him just being like, well, shit, if I want to do this annually and he wants to like go back to doing annual series and he wants to do all this other stuff, I should probably get this out of the way so he's got plenty of time for that other stuff.
That's kind of the way they film Red Dwarf too these days. Last I checked, is
Uh,
that they'll do it like they'll try to get like multiple seasons done in as quickly as possible, and that way they can drip feed it out for at least a couple of years before they need to do the next big recording session.
mhm.
I mean, that
uh,
makes sense. Aren't their seasons usually fairly short?
Their seasons are like somewhere between like 6 to 12 episodes,
Hmm.
depending on the year and the setup.
Yeah. So as long as they've got enough funding, they could definitely knock a few out in a year.
Well, it's mostly just trying to get all the crew back. That's usually
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
issue. I think a couple of them either still do other shows for BBC or also have stage things
Mm.
and so forth that they still do. So
Yeah, yeah.
theater is still big in Britain, and it boggles my brain once in a while.
it's big in parts of the U.S. too, but just not definitely not as big
Mm.
as on screen.
Yeah.
So actually, the next bit of news, I'm seeing now. I actually was mistaken. This should have been before the other one. I thought because they're announcing it now, I thought it was for the 2025 season, but this is actually for the 2024 season. So this should have been before the other one. And that is that the BBC has announced 2 of the writers for Series 14. There will be an episode co-written by Kate Herron and Brioni Redman, who I think most people listening would probably best recognize as for their work on Marvel's Loki. They also worked on Sex Education, which is the show Shurigatwa is currently best known for.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
And it looks like that episode is going to be is directed by Ben Chessel. I think we can say was at this point because we know they're done filming it.
Right, it's just
It's
editing
just
now.
in post. Yeah. And Chessel directed one episode set in the 60s, starring Jinx Monsoon, and another set in the Regency period, featuring Jonathan Groff and Indira Varma. So based on other context, Cultbox says it's most likely or almost definitely that it was the Regency period episode that was written by Herron and Redman.
Okay.
And as a refresher, what the hell is the Regency period again?
Yeah, I forget. It's one of those older centuries.
It's the decades right before the Victorian era.
Ah, okay, yeah.
So pre-Victorian might be a way to think of it.
Yeah.
For those of us outside of Britain. All right, moving on. Russell T Davies had one of those periodic interviews with Doctor Who magazine, and teased some information about the 14th Doctor. So this would be the David Tennant Redux Doctor. So the full quote I'll give here: a mysteriously forgotten excursion for the TARDIS in between Planet of the Ood and Sontaran stratagem. Or maybe a multiverse thing. They're all the rage these days. Maybe this is the Doctor and Donna from Universe 557, all set to collide with our own. Then again, maybe, just maybe, this return is so impossible that it's actually an intricate illusion created by an old enemy of the Doctor's. Or maybe an old enemy of Donna's. Nereus. Of course, I wouldn't give that away in the pages of Doctor Who magazine, would I? But then again, this magazine is the first place I ever revealed the name of Billie Piper's Rose. So read carefully. There are truths in here. So that's not
I'm gonna
actually
slap
necessarily
you,
saying
Russell.
there's. That's not necessarily saying there's truths in that paragraph, but maybe somewhere in the magazine.
Again, I'm gonna slap you, Russell. You giant troll.
I think of these, the one that fans have considered to be most likely is that an old enemy of the Doctor's, such as the toy maker that we're going to see this season, has something to do with this. But Russell also said he is the 14th Doctor because he's not a trick doctor. He's not a pretend doctor. He's not a jape. He's not a plan by the trickster or anything. He is genuinely the 14th Doctor. There's something subtler going on that does get revealed.
Sure, Russell. We'll see. Once again, I feel he's trolling us.
So, I'm not... Yeah, having reread that, I'm not entirely sure if that first paragraph gives anything away. But I hope that the second one does assuage some concerns that, the whole calling him the 14th was always a troll, and that he's going to turn around in November and be like, actually, Shurigatwa's the 14th, trollolololo.
Yeah.
It sounds like he's doubling down on the fact that Tennant is the 14th.
Yeah, but he would also do that, especially nowadays when he can get away with it, whereas opposed to before when leaks got out every other week.
Yeah. Like, I'll put it this way. If they really want to sell that this is supposed to be a distinct Doctor despite it still being David Tennant, then I hope that he acts it differently. You
You'd have
know,
to act
I
it very
want this to
differently, and
be
I have
like
no signs of that so
same
far.
face. Yeah, same face but different attitude would be like,
Mhm.
okay, that's a way to
Well,
say this isn't the same as you remember.
so I mean that's an because going by attitude, he's sort of played two versions of the Doctor already, but I don't think like his catchphrases and things like that ever changed. So the pre Journey's End Doctor and the post Journey's End Doctor, there was a personality difference, but I think all of the like super obvious things were the same.
Yeah.
Like he still dressed the same, he still said L Z and so forth.
Mm.
Mm.
So yeah, it's like if we get none of his usual, like typical 10 shtick,
Mm.
and but it's still David Tennant, but
I
he's
mean, we've
playing it
already
differently,
gotten a
then
although the
yeah, yeah,
emphasis was
yeah.
wrong.
Yeah, like if the idea is it's like, well, you can't go back because it's never going to be exactly the same. If that's kind of like a subtle theme, then that would be kind of nice. But again, if it just ends up being Tennant playing it exactly like 10, then my mind is just going to go, well, no,
I
this
mean,
is just 10 again. It's
I
not
will say,
14.
depending on how many like stunt actors they have, if he plays it exactly like 10 at his age, he might throw out his back. Especially,
Probably, yeah.
My hip.
especially now that he's a father of how many kids? Like that ages you, man.
I believe at least
He's
4, isn't it? I mean,
he's
they've been going through them fast.
he's aged like 20 years visually since. I mean,
Mm,
part of that is obviously like he's not like, in the makeup chair every week, and they want this
yeah.
actor to look older and more haggard. So some of that is manipulation, but like he definitely looks like he's aged like 20 years since 2010.
Mm.
All right, moving on to our next piece of news. Speaking of David Tennant, he is going to be hosting a documentary on BBC4 as part of the 60th anniversary, in which in which he covers the classic era of Doctor Who, including rarely seen interview and clips covering from William Hartnell's first incarnation through the Seventh Doctor. Um, the article title on Doctor Who News is titled "Talking Doctor Who," but it doesn't actually say the name of the documentary. So I think we can assume that "Talking Doctor Who" is the name of the documentary.
Maybe.
But that's it's hard to confirm that. In the UK, this will be on the 1st of November at 7:30 p.m. on BBC4. Hopefully this will be aired in it won't be aired on BBC America, I'm sure, but hopefully it'll be put online or something. Or it's
Hard to
really hard to
say.
tell now that Doctor Who on BBC America isn't a thing. Like, I don't know if like maybe it'll be on Disney Plus, but maybe it won't.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't know about that, especially since they don't have Classic Who, and this is based on Classic Who
Mhm.
stuff. We might just have to literally wait for someone to
I'm
leak it on YouTube or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it might end up on BritBox. Like
Maybe BritBox,
it's
maybe.
yeah. There's a lot that we don't know about what the international Doctor Who is going to look like
Until some of the
starting
stuff
next
hits.
month.
Yeah.
Starting next month, which is kind of
Yeah.
ridiculous. And I think a lot of that is just stuff that like nobody thought was important enough. Like not even that they're intentionally keeping the secret, but like the UK side doesn't care about it. Disney is like, oh yeah, this is just another property. Like it's not that important.
Well, it's another property that they don't have to worry about. It just gets provided to them.
Right.
Mm.
And then like we don't know if anything is still gonna be on HBO Max, which it might be. We don't know. In
Yeah.
terms of like what happens to series 1 through 12, we don't know. What
Yeah.
what's going to be on BritBox, what's going to be on HBO, what's going to be on Disney. The only thing we know is that new Doctor Who episodes will be on Disney. Um,
Mm.
and it's not a regular cable network, so they have less motivation to put in these behind the scenes documentary. Although I will say, at least on the Marvel side, I know they've been really good about uploading documentaries and stuff. So I would like to think that
Yeah.
they will do the same thing for Doctor Who.
Like all the Marvel and even I think all the Star Wars shows so far have had like episode by episode little
Mm-hmm.
mini documentary things. Like honestly, if Disney Plus is like putting that much money into this deal, like if Disney generally putting this much money into that deal, I could see them being like, we'll take that internationally, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Like
It,
Actually,
you know,
actually depends upon who's making it. Is this
mm,
actually Is this actually a BBC production, or is this something also
right,
being made by
yeah.
Bad
I
Wolf?
guess
I,
right, yeah.
I,
I think that might be
I,
the catch.
Yeah.
judging by the only information we have is that it's airing on BBC, which probably means
Mm,
it's a BBC production to some extent, just like Doctor Who is a BBC production via Bad Wolf. Um,
yeah.
like this is a BBC production, at least at the very top of the ladder, but we don't know
Mm,
necessarily other stages of the ladder.
Hmm.
yeah.
Well, that's the bottom rung, more so. That's the rung right before it gets out. My
Mm.
question is who actually made it? Is it actually in-house BBC, or is it somebody else, again, like Bad Wolf? In which case, if it's Bad Wolf, I would assume Disney would pick it up.
Mm.
But if it's not, I think our
It's
best option
seeing
as Americans to see it, it might be to actually keep our eye on the BBC
right.
website.
Uh, See, I think I think the consideration there is it's more like, so for example, if HBO Max had Classic Who, there's no way in hell Disney Plus would air this documentary because they don't want to give
Yeah.
HBO subscribers. Um,
Yeah.
if BritBox has Classic Who,
Which it
I don't know
does.
if Disney Plus gives a shit. Um,
Mm.
It still takes them away from their streaming service to go to another streaming
True.
service to watch Classic Who.
Yeah, but I mean, like
Mm.
BritBox, they probably don't see as a threat, but they might for the reason you just said.
Exactly.
Which it might partially depend on like how expensive it. Well, yeah, how expensive BritBox is, and also the fact probably a lot of Disney Plus people aren't currently on BritBox. So yeah, so that might be a huge commercial for BritBox, even
Mhm.
if it's not, even if that's not the goal. It's obviously in Britain you can watch this documentary and then go onto iPlayer and watch every episode except for An Unearthly Child.
Yeah.
But that's not the case in in
Oh,
the
that's
U.S.
right. That's the other thing that's coming. I believe that's going to be coming this next week.
Yes, November 1st as well, the same day this airs.
No, I
Yeah.
mean my box copy of
Oh,
the first 3 Doctor Who stories.
got you.
um but yeah, like I feel like at minimum, if it is purely a BBC thing and they can't be bothered giving it to Disney or whoever else, then they might just throw the whole thing on YouTube with ads.
Maybe they'll throw it
Um,
on, or someone will leak it on there, and they won't take it down, at least
Mhm.
stateside, because
mm.
no one. It's such a weird gray area. No one's going to take it down over here.
Yeah, like I will say if it's more counted as a BBC production than Doctor Who production, I might be lucky in that it'll go up on ABC iView,
Mm.
which is where a lot of BBC stuff in Australia usually ends up unless they have a deal with a specific channel for a specific show. But yeah, even then, it would make the most sense that, and it might just be that they're like, well, we haven't figured out where it's going internationally, so we're just not gonna say yet.
Well, they got about a week or less to decide here.
Yeah, they've got a week exactly.
Right, yeah. But
They're
also,
like,
you never
well,
know. I
they're
feel
like, well,
I feel
we're gonna
like
wait
we-
8 months. We're gonna
Right,
like
yeah.
class. We're gonna wait 8 months
yeah,
and
yeah.
then send it overseas.
Not gonna lie, it would not shock me if it's like it exclusively airs on TV in the UK, and then they'll put out like a DVD or something
With it as an
with the
extra,
documentary
yeah.
on it. Yeah, and like on either on a DVD as an extra for maybe like the specials, or
Right.
like if they'll put it out on its own for way more than it's really worth, or something like that. Like, it would not shock me if they pull something like that, but I could also see if Disney really want and they want more content for Disney Plus, that they could try to be like, well, we're giving you all this money, so if you can just let us have this, because it's technically something that's being made after the deal was already made, so
Hmm.
maybe they could finagle something, but yeah, we'll see.
So this
Yeah.
also makes me wonder. So this is airing at 7:30 p.m. on November 1st. What if we don't get an actual date for the specials until the end of the documentary? Like
Mm.
8:30 p.m. on British time on the 1st, and then
Uh,
RTD shows up and is like, "Hey, actually on Saturday we're going to air the first special. Bet you didn't expect that."
I mean, I am
Russell!
I'm looking on the BBC website, and it does specifically say that the special is 59 minutes. So that does give an extra minute for Russell to
Yes,
show up and
one
be a
minute for
troll.
yo.
Very quickly show up and be like, "Hey, these are airing on these dates. Bye." If they really wanted.
All right, we've
Which,
we've taken
We,
that
we've,
yeah,
we've,
yeah.
we've done a
very
deep dive
short
on this for
article,
no
and
reason.
we've
Yeah.
literally taken that every direction we can.
Hmm.
So in our next bit of news, we have the audiobooks for the 60th anniversary specials. So this is, relatively little one. So I imagine that novelizations and audiobooks are common for new episodes. I don't think the fact that they were happening was even a blur mentioned. Um, but the news bit is that Jacqueline King, who we know as Sylvia Noble, is going to be reading the Star Beast novelization. So we have, a character who features in the episode. Her actor is going to be the one narrating the novelization as written by Gary Russell. And we do not yet know who is going to be narrating the other two audiobooks, which are Wild Blue Yonder by Mark Morris and The Giggle by James Goss. And in case those sound familiar, yes, these names are all prominent Big Finish names because Doctor Who is just Big Finish at this point. The audiobooks will be out on the 1st of February, and we may or may not get news articles about who is narrating the other ones. All right, moving on. A new anthology has been announced of anthology book entitled Adventures Across Space and Time, a Doctor Who Reader, which will have academic, critic, and fan writings about Doctor Who, as well as newly commissioned work addressing contemporary issues and debates, whatever that means.
That's vague AF.
I'm guessing that means like essays, like that they commissioned in,
Possibly, yeah.
yeah, like as essays they commissioned about Modern Who, in addition to previously written work, is how I would probably interpret that.
Hmm.
So they mentioned, let's see,
Like, yeah, it could be like essays being like, here's this, you know, here's what real life issue is being addressed in this story, kind of a
right.
thing.
So you
Maybe.
might have things like maybe works by Elizabeth Sandifer, or I forget who wrote the other Doctor Who books that I have in my way too far away from me in my bookshelf to check who wrote them. Um, yeah, they have things like, like critical analysis, works about the fandom. Um, the anthology includes Peter Capaldi's Dalek Builder's letter to Radio Times when he was 15 years old, Stephen Moffat's 1995 rec.arts.doctorwhopost, and many other contributions from various writers and artists. Uh, so if that sounds interesting to you, that is available now. And I'm going to follow this link and see what the cost is. So this is in dollars, so I'm assuming that it ships to the US. I see $31.45 for paperback, $90 for hardcover. That's a big jump, so I hope the hardcover is pretty nice. It's available as an ebook for $25.16, which is not that much cheaper than the paperback.
Yeah. Hmm.
Although it says it's published November 16th, so I'm not sure available
Pre-orders
now
are
is actually
available. Yeah.
correct.
Pre-orders
Yeah.
are available now.
Yeah, this does not say, Doctor Who or Cult Box is not saying pre-orders, so they have a I think that's a mistake in the article.
Mm.
But yes, you can pre-order it now. And I guess there's $3.50, or no, there's a 10% discount, depending. Yeah, so that discount was whatever format you get. I'm guessing after it's released, it no longer has that discount.
Most likely.
Mm.
Free U.S. delivery on orders $35 or more. So that's, I guess, incentive to buy the hardcover. I don't know. And
Get free
I'm out of
shipping for only
links.
$9.
That was not the last. It was the last link, but not the last bit of news. The last bit of news is that on October 19th, Big Finish released Torchwood Odyssey, written by Patrick O'Connor and starring Claire Rushbrook, who I don't even know who that character is. She's in the Doctor's spacesuit and surrounded by and with an ood.
Yep.
But yeah, so if you they should have why did they not call it Odyssey? Come on, Big Finish. You got just add an O.
She was in the Impossible Planet Satan Pit.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that would be why
What
she's
does that
also
have to do with
nude.
Torchwood?
Yeah, why is this Torchwood? What? What?
So
Where?
I don't
When?
know
What? How? Where? What? When?
They're kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel when it comes to Torchwood. I'm not gonna lie. Like that's not to say that this, it might be a great story.
Yes,
I'm just saying,
not to say that this is going to be for sure bad, but this is just
in terms
really
of whether
weird.
people are affiliated with Torchwood or not, they've gone from actual Torchwood to the lady who died in the episode in which in Torchwood 1 to Victorian Torchwood. I mean, Elizabethan Torchwood to literal Queen Elizabeth as Torchwood to now somebody in the future who has
from the future that's just being shoved into this.
So
like
yeah,
the 3 survivors.
All right, that is the end of our news, and now I'm going to refill my soda while Alex talks about a movie and video game he experienced over the past month.
All right,
thanks.
X, go.
I misspoke there.
But yeah, so a couple weeks ago now, I managed to go and see Saw 10, or Saw X. I assume they don't really care, but in any case, I don't know what I can't even remember what my expectations were going into this. I was just like, well, it's a new Saw movie, and I haven't gone to I legitimately realized that I had not gone to see a movie at the cinemas this year since Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. And that was in April?
Well, let's be fair. Let's be very brutally honestly fair here. There's not been a lot of good, interesting stuff releasing in theaters lately.
Yeah. I mean, there was some stuff that I was interested in seeing, but I either didn't want to see alone, or I was just couldn't justify the expense, even on a cheap day. So I was just like,
See,
stuff it. And
I
this
believe
game,
I can go a couple towns over and get a movie ticket for like $6. So
oh yeah, like
once I get that
I
card
ended
up and
up,
running this next month or so,
yeah,
stop me.
the cinema chain that has a thing in my hometown has like a thing you can sign up for where if you go X amount of times, you save up points for a free showing, or you can
Mm.
use slightly less to get cheap tickets any day of the week. Um, and I think I just went for cheap tickets. Because this was like, I think I saw it on a Sunday, so I was like, I'm not paying full whack. Even if I like this, it's not going to be worth full price.
The
Um,
worst part about having
but
moved to Champaign is that there are no longer cheap movies near me.
mm, um, but yeah, I really like this movie. I would say that, and like, not that the bar is especially high, but this is to me the best Saw movie since Saw 6. And now
Mm.
I like Saw 6. There are a lot of people who don't, but to me that was the last uh good Saw movie insofar as like Jigsaw I can watch. Um I don't hate it, but it's also like could take it or leave it. Saw seven's crap. Spiral is a mess. Like it has good elements, but oddly enough, the only reason that got made was because of Chris Rock, and he's one of the weakest parts of the movie. So this this is a midquel technically. It's set between Saw 1 and 2.
Hmm.
And like uh the character of John Kramer, aka Jigsaw, is like front and center. This is a movie about him. I think what worried me going in is I thought this was going to be like, I forgot that this was going to be a midquel, and I thought this was a prequel that was retconning like, oh, this was his first death trap scenario stuff. And it's like, oh, no, okay, right. It's a midquel. Um but yeah, I really enjoy it. Tobin Bell is acting his ass off. I wish he would get like, I think was talking with someone about this before, but like I do wish, as much as I love him in the Saw movies, I really wish he would get bigger, more prominent stuff to work with. Like have him in a Knives Out sequel or something. That could be really fun. Just having him play one of the people, like play a character that is the kind of character that Jigsaw usually picks as a victim. Just some
Mm.
entitled prick. Like that would be very funny. Um but yeah, I will. It is an interesting detail, by the way, that they do not. They apparently, according to what I read, the director actively decided to not de-age either him, because this is probably 20 years later from what this is supposed to be
About
set between.
15, yeah,
Yeah, like
at least.
and because I think the original Saw was like 2004, I think, and then the sequel was the next year, so that was 05. So
It's like
it's
0405
getting
or
there.
0506, something like that, yeah.
Yeah, like so yeah, it's been close to 20 years. He's
It's
aged
approaching it.
obviously, but and like so it's Shawnee Smith who is in this as well, but prominently, and neither of them have been de-aged. And the director even was specifically like, usually that can kind of fuck with the acting a little, because maybe it'll mess with like very little acting choices that they make with the face, like subtle stuff or
Yeah,
whatever.
the
And it's
aging
just
will
like,
F with your subtle acting, yeah, very
mm,
likely.
yeah. Funny thing is a side effect of them not doing that is that he looks more like a cancer patient now than because
Oof.
he's like just that old. They would have been like additional makeup and stuff, but he's just getting that old that he looks more like he can pass as this is someone who is dealing with this but hasn't hit the worst part yet. so they can still get up and walk around and shit.
Mm.
Compared to the other ones where he was just an old dude that they usually had to put a ton of makeup on to make him look
Mm.
like sick. Like again, it's not I'm not saying he looks like super frail and like if you poked him he'd fall apart or anything. But it's just like it actually works a bit better that they didn't de-age him when the story revolves around his cancer. And the funny thing is that I compared this to Saw 6. This is another healthcare Saw movie. Because the whole idea, and it comes across in the trailer, so it's not really a spoiler to discuss, but he effectively gets scammed by people that say that they can cure his cancer, or at
Mm.
least try to get it into remission.
I just realized
And
have we thought about a stop? Have we stopwatched?
mm,
No, I
Oh,
didn't do a
not on
stopwatch.
stream.
Oh,
yeah. But in any case, it's a good movie. If you're a fan of these movies, it's worth a watch. Honestly, even if you're not, I'd say this is worth a watch. And because it's kind of a midquel, but kind of self-contained, because the only characters that come up are like characters that it would make sense to know already or whatever. But in any case, you could watch this on its own in isolation. It'd be good. So I'd say it's worth watching. I'm pretty sure it's not in cinemas anymore at this point, but maybe in the US it still is. But in any case, I think it's worth seeing. So moving on from that,
Mortal
to
Kombat
Mortal
1.
Kombat 1. Yeah, which I got through the entire story of in one sitting. It
Jeez.
took me like 6 hours, but I did it. Because I decided to. I forget if I technically did get it the day it came out or like not long after. And I decided to stream it one day and managed to get through the whole story in one go, which shocked me. I thought I would get halfway, stop, and then get the rest of the way later. Um, but no, I actually got through it all. I do like some of the changes, but something that bugs me is that I thought I won't go into like exact details of like these characters do this and blah blah blah, but I thought that with oh by the way, if you'd played Mortal Kombat 11 but you didn't play the DLC or didn't like watch the cutscenes for the DLC, this story is not going to make any sense to you. So good luck with that. That does feel a bit scummy, but in any
But it's
case,
number one. If it's number
um,
one, then it should make sense.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
I thought this was going to be a case of like MK9 was a soft reboot, and then the ending of the MK11 stuff was going to be a hard reboot. Nope. We are still like, yes, the universe has changed again because of stuff that Liu Kang does. But
Was it?
like,
I
Raiden.
remember seeing things. I thought Liu Kang was dead.
That
No,
again,
he
that was
is
for the
a.
first soft
I
reboot,
mean,
Bill. That you're way
yeah,
behind on the timeline.
yeah. He was technically brought back. Like again, it's a lot of time travel. Like ever since MK9 to now, it's been basically time shenanigans. It's what the MCU is doing now. It's very multiverse, timeline shit as well.
So,
A
in
lot of that
short,
stuff.
uh,
Yeah.
Hmm.
I was okay with some of it, and some stuff was very like, okay, we're making allusions to past games, we're redoing things from past games, but also we're like, I thought this was going to be a hard reset. For God's sake, they called it Mortal Kombat 1. That sounds like a hard reset. There is still time shenanigans going on, and I'm like, fuck off. I did not come to that for this. I came for a rebooted timeline where the events of the previous games that had story that played out would play out differently. I do like some of the changes. I like some of the characters that were either brought back or emphasized. For God's sake, they emphasized Reptile. And it's very interesting.
my
You
boy.
know, so like I'll say this much: it was very funny because there's one voice actor that I was like, "Ooh, that's a bit rough." And then when I was discussing it with people, turned out that was the character they brought Megan Fox in to act for. So
Yeah, I've been hearing about that.
I
Out
didn't
of all
even
of all the
realize it was
things that
her.
people have been nitpicking about this game, like Megan Fox is like the one that everyone agrees on that was not the brilliant choice.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I've heard good things about her acting in Jennifer's Body. So very clearly, if she's motivated or has the right director, she can do
Jennifer's Body
like
was also like
good
10, 15
stuff.
years ago.
Right, true. But even then, it's like it was a character that worked for her or whatever, and just that
Well,
worked.
I
For whatever
think the poor
reason,
girl's been through the ringer more than a couple times since then, and she's
yeah,
probably just like, oh, whatever.
yeah. It felt like this. I mean, I've already seen people speculating that they maybe might just flat out recast and re-record everything, but they also did facial stuff for to make the character sort of look like her, so probably not.
I saw pictures. It doesn't really look that much like her either.
Well, yeah, I think it's like when I heard that was the thing, I would look at the character and certain things and go, "Okay, I can see it." They've like made it still a character, but it's like as if she's been done up to look like playing a character or something. But yeah, it's very much when I didn't know that was the case, didn't know. Wouldn't have been able to tell you. But in any case, I hope that they are done with this shit soon. Because again, like, you know, I'm okay with like the Marvel shit because at least that has some bearing in the comics were doing that for decades before anyway. And I assume the idea is they're doing it for a phase, or like, well, not a phase. They're doing it for a saga, and then that's going to probably stop, or at least ramp way the hell down. This is like this. We've been doing timeline shit since 9. Can we please stop? Like, can we
I
just
don't trust other realm
simplify
to fix
things?
this.
The the
Yeah.
whole media environment at this point is built on nostalgia for things that came out often
Mm,
before most of us were born. And
yeah.
yeah, it needs to cool it on that a little bit because
Yeah.
new stories can exist
Mm,
without needing to time travel back to old ones.
yeah. I mean, like,
Well, ever since the
storyline
first time
wise,
travel in Mortal Kombat, I'm just been like, is it any good? I've heard it's middling. Nah, I'm not gonna waste my time. I'll just keep playing my PlayStation 2 copy of the last game that I liked. Thank you
yeah.
very much.
I will say Mortal Kombat X had the least in between. So like 9 had a lot, 11 had a lot. This has I mean it's mostly in the back end, but again, it comes up and it's just like I thought we were done. I thought this was like MK11's the hard reboot and now we're just starting the story
Nah.
over again with characters in different positions because now Liu Kang is the Raiden character effectively. He's in the Raiden slot as the mentor with godlike powers. And Raiden is just an ordinary human now.
That
Um,
that sounds terrible.
I mean, honestly, it works with how they've done it. That works, and it's an
Mm,
interesting dynamic shift. And that's the
wait,
thing.
the
All the
Thunder God is a
new,
regular human. Why do I feel like that story existed already?
Mortal
mm,
Kombat 2, the
um,
movie.
um, but yeah, in this case, in this like rebooted universe or whatever, Raiden's just a normal person because it was Liu Kang who rebooted everything. So now he's kind of the fucking master of time and space, etc. But in any
Lame.
case, and like, yeah, it's like it's again, it's a lot. It's very comic book shit that I'm not necessarily expecting from
Also,
Mortal
we've been
Kombat.
going for about
It's
6 minutes.
getting,
So haven't
yeah,
only 8 minutes.
yeah, it's they're overcomplicating shit. There's a lot of things that I did like in the story, but there's just so much that I'm like, can we just end this, please? The game's fun to play, but like the story does not have to be this convoluted. please do better with whatever the next game's called. It'll probably end up being called MK2 at this rate. But yeah, I still
Yeah.
think the game's worth playing, and people might get more out of it than I did with the story if they have more nostalgia for it, because I came in with 9. But yeah, I think that's about all I've got
Alrighty.
without rambling more.
Yeah. Well, what was that one? I forget what even that last one was. I'd have to look up my pile and find out where it is buried, which pile it's buried in. But yeah, the last PlayStation 2 game was the last Mortal Kombat I gave a care about. Ever since they got rid of being able to create your own character in that game, I don't care anymore. I'd rather
I
just
think
play
it might have
Ghost Rider.
I think it might have been Armageddon, because 9
Armageddon,
seems to.
yeah.
Yeah, because 9 takes up right after Armageddon, and that's the first PS3 one.
The last time I paid attention to Mortal Kombat was when they were announcing that horror movie characters were going to be in it.
Which was also 9.
Mm.
I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
9 was
Well,
the
9
first
and
time to start bringing them
9,
in.
yeah. 9 had Freddy, 10 had Jason Leatherface, a Xenomorph, and Predator.
And I think 10 had Terminator and RoboCop?
No, that was 11. 11 had those two and Rambo and someone else, I forget who.
I know one of them had
Seemingly
Ninja
the-
Turtles.
Actually, yeah, that was 10. I think. Might have been 11. I think that was 10. And this one is going to have seemingly a bunch of comic book-ish kind of character. Like, there's going to be a character from The Boys. There's going to be a character from that Amazon Prime thing that's kind of like The Boys but animated. I can't remember the name of it. It starts with I think.
I think I know which one you're talking about. Yeah, I haven't seen it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Anywho, we're rambling again. I suppose we should get on to talking about the actual episode now.
Yep.
So I guess
I
I'm
guess
ready.
you want me to have a stopwatch?
Yeah, I have one ready, but you should have one too.
Okay. Ready for a countdown?
Yep.
All right. 3, 2, 1, go.
All right, so the episode picks up with the Fifth Doctor picking up Nissa, Tegan, and some companion I've never met before named Mark. And he picks them up and he says apparently they're very annoyed with him for over something, and he says they'll talk. But he then adds, after they get into the TARDIS, when we're ready. To which most of them roll their eyes and Mark goes to go lay down. They traveled with the intent to land on Gallifrey, but they end up in a basically forgotten medical resort, and they start to explore and get on. They meet actually up first with one of the local people who are still has someone there supposedly for treatments, and they get on essentially a boat to head back over towards the hospital, if you will, the hospital/resort. They get back over there, start poking around. They suddenly realize that the robot that ran the boat also runs several other things in the hospital and is basically a combined consciousness. They start to go their own separate ways. I believe Tegan just starts exploring the hospital. Nissa heads out to explore the updrafts that cause essentially a water shield above them. And Mark just tries to, when he gets out of his room, tries to help with the little lady that they met on the way over, and watches over her as very quickly after after the doctor tries to get to his room to calm down, he starts having nightmares and visions of Adric. And by the time he comes back out, there's been a death, and it is the woman's significant other. She has apparently perished, but then the robot won't let anybody in to look. They start to try and figure out what's going on. First, questioning the robot because they believe the robot's up to something for not letting people in to look at what happened. But then they start to ask. Then the robot basically hints to them to ask others what's going on. There's a bit of a scuffle with one of the people that they first start to question, to which the spirit of Atric suddenly shows up, stops the man from attacking the doctor, and then suddenly all of them disappear temporarily for a brief moment. All of them being the strangers in the hospital as well as Adric. They start looking around to try and find some more answers. Nissa ends up getting caught in the updraft that's causing the water shield, while the robot gets caught in the storm with the boat starting to try and sink. Mark is attacked by the other robots, but then the attack stops as they had befriended Nissa and suddenly need him to go out and save her. So they get him on a boat. They get him out to the bigger one, and then they tie a rope on him essentially and send him up to go collect and save Nissa. Get her back. Both Mark and Nissa start coughing a lot as it's found out that the updrafts that are causing the shield also contain a virus in it, which is killing people. They get back to the hospital. By this point, Tegan and the doctor have figured out, with the help of the robot boy that one of the other patients has as a surrogate child, can see that through the weird illusions that are going on in the hospital, and that not everything that they've been seeing is as it seems, including visiting the room temporarily where the couple were at and finding a strange machine there, which the doctor starts to quickly put things together. By the time he gets back to the others, who are all waiting in an auditorium, I believe, he already is aware that there's a virus, that they have all caught it, and that all of them are starting to suffer at certain levels. But the only person who's also still alive and doesn't seem to be suffering from it is the little old lady, who at least figured out that by making her own off-branded tea can at least save off the effects and stop herself from dying to the virus, but has to keep taking the tea on a daily basis. Long story short, they manage to the doctor figures out a cure, but he needs more time. They can't stop the other spirits from trying to basically order the robot to murder them, but they could manage to buy some time, to which Adric, the spirit of Adric, as they remember him, decides he's going to be the one to throw the switch because he doesn't want to be cursed to a constant half-life for the rest of his life, and stops himself and the other spirits, allowing everyone to finally be free of the building, and the doctor helps the robot, the old lady, and the little boy robot to find a home where all of them could possibly survive and blend in with the local populace, thus ending the story on a "we need to still talk" moment. The end.
Well, when I had assumed ending of the story was the end of the sentence, and I hit stop. But that gives several milliseconds short of 5 minutes.
I got a 503, so
Hmm.
roughly 5-ish minutes.
Yep. All right. So starting with Alex, what did we like about this story?
You know, it's interesting that for a change, I'm torn between two overalls when usually it's either hard to narrow down like an overall aspect, or in some cases the story is like so lacking that I'm like, oh god, I've got to think of something positive. But in this case, ooh, you know, I'll save the other one in case it doesn't come up, and I'll go with what I went with last week actually, and go for the music again.
Ah,
Because while at first it threw me off a little, because like last week I was like, oh wow, this music is great. It sounds exactly like I'm just listening to a like story that only survived in audio from the Third Doctor era. This feels very of now. Like this soundtrack would not sound out of place in a New Who episode. But I mean, at the same time, it kind of had a very some 80s touches here and there.
yeah, I was gonna say it
Um,
sounds like it's a cleaned up version of what the Fifth Doctor soundtrack would sound like, which I'm not against.
mm. Oh yeah, like again, like that's why it's a positive overall, because it was just like I didn't ultimately care that it didn't sound very 80s Doctor Who. because it still fit the mood so well that I just like, I just went along with it. Some cases that could probably be a little jarring, but in this case, um, the more I listened to it, the more I was taken in by it. So yeah, like this is honestly, I would if Doctor Who ever stopped having like a set composer in New Who and would like work with whoever they could happen to get their hands on at the time. Honestly, I kind of hope the person who did the score for this gets a chance to do like an episode of New Who just to show them what they can do. Because there's definitely, again, as I said, this you could put this over a New Who episode and it would work. So,
Honestly, the composers in general for Big Finish are just like that.
Yeah. All right, Matt.
So on to me. Yep.
Yep.
General overall thing, I have some qualms about some of the voice work, but I'll get into that later. But I will say overall that despite that, the sound of certain voices, the quality of the writing for the voices was, I think, really well done for this. Because you have such a wide variety. You literally have a couple of little old ladies. You have a middle-aged woman who's still trying to fawn over a non-existent son, a robotic boy, a plethora of the same robot, and then you have the main cast and a couple of other extras as well. And it's just like all of them sounded very nicely distinctive from one another, and they do, and especially the main cast in particular had such good lines that you would expect it, again, to almost be like something out of a lost episode that we just don't have the visuals for. There's just one voice in particular that I'm kind of like, I understand why you were in here, but oof, a little bit of an oof. But I'll get into that later.
Okay.
But otherwise, at least even for their voice acting, the lines they were given were very much of their character. So I couldn't hold too much of a grudge on it because it sounded pretty good otherwise.
All right. So from my end, I think I'm going to say Fabrico was a very interesting character, and I really liked the way that they used basically having multiple bodies as a way to dig a little more deeply into this character's psyche and show kind of different facets of her, personality and her kind of cracking under the strain of, her life. And yeah, I thought it was just really, really interesting to done. Don't know what the hell I just said. Really interestingly done, I think. But very unique. I don't think I've seen a character really handled in this way. And at first I was like, what the hell is going on here? But then when it got to the whole point of saving Nissa, it was like, okay, we really seem to be coming to a point here.
Yeah.
I do think she should have gotten therapy at the end. I think she needed it. Her
therapy was getting free.
At least as for her role in the story, I think that was, a positive.
Yeah, and generally it was kind of nice because I realized, my God, I actually had three things. One of them was going to be, my God, effectively sentient androids, robots, whatever, and they're not evil. My God,
evil
like,
for
you kind
a
of
little
think,
bit of the time.
you kind of think they're gonna go there, and then it, like, nope.
They almost go there, and then something nags their conscience, and they immediately stop, and it's like, oh.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
nope.
evil enough that like 20 plus of them were surrounding Mark with knives.
Right, true.
But...
like, right. But yeah, they didn't turn out to be like the villains of the story necessarily, which was nice. Because usually that tends to happen. And it was like, well, it wouldn't have necessarily been like, oh, well, that's just ruined the whole thing for me necessarily. It was just kind of a nice change of pace. And I guess additionally, my other thing, which could almost be left for final thoughts, but I'll bring it up very quickly. Just if this story existed and Time Flight didn't, I would be so happy.
Oh yeah, this would have been a much better follow up to Time Flight
Like,
than Time Flight
yeah.
was.
I mean, obviously,
mean,
Mark wouldn't be there, but
I was gonna say we'd
like,
have to have the whole Mark arc apparently,
yeah,
but
right,
Yeah, I have no idea who this Mark is. He's just kind of here.
yeah.
I'm out of the ringer on this
Um,
one.
Or even if it wasn't like directly after Earthshock, if it was like a couple stories later.
Just to
As
revisit
just
the
like,
fact that even though they've been trying to go on their adventures and trying to be the same old team, it's still nagging them. Because it did feel like they rushed off way too hard to just kind of try to forget Adric
Yeah.
as soon as possible.
all
But,
right. So to
yeah,
what
yeah.
we disliked about the episode, and starting with Alex.
It's interesting because this may be what Matt was talking about, but it's also probably not because I think I know who he's talking about and I have someone else to talk about. And that is with the acting. My problem was mainly with oh my god, is it Sarah Sutton that plays Nissa? Or am I getting that name confused with someone else?
Sarah Sutton is Nissa, yes.
Yes. It's not all the time, so it's more of a nitpick.
I
But
think I know what you're thinking.
some of her delivery is a bit off. Like, it's not even like off as in, oh, this doesn't sound like Nissa. It's just that it's a bit flat.
Which I mean, I
It's a little
think
bit
that
weird.
I think for
Yeah.
the season this is set in, especially, that fits. Like there were,
True.
I don't disagree in the sense that there were scenes where I was like, was she replaced with a robot because she's talking like a robot? But I think if you
Yeah.
think back to like this is supposed to be set in I forget the season number, but that first season, you know, it's right after Adric died. I'm pretty sure her character was very often like that. I feel like we didn't really see more of her expanding really until the next season when everybody changed their uniforms. So I think I mean it definitely can be weird in the story, but in the sense of trying to keep it faithful to the 80s, I think it's actually correct. Season 19, that's the one.
Yeah. And like, I could honestly see it being as simple as, since COVID hit, I think most of the recording has been done in isolation. So it could just be because she didn't have the other actors to bounce off if they were recording separately,
Maybe.
that it wasn't as easy for her to be Nissa as naturally because she didn't have the other actors to directly work off. I don't know. Like, again,
Hard
it's
to
very
say.
nitpicky because it doesn't like take me out of the story entirely, and she has some good acting moments as well. But it's just, it seems a little off. Whereas like Davison, I had no issue with. Tegan was great.
Yeah.
And like, it's funny because like with forgetting the actor's name, but Adric.
Matthew.
Of course, he's not.
Waterhouse.
Yeah, Matthew Waterhouse. That's it. He's never gonna like. He was very young when he played Adric, so of course he's not going to sound like that at this point in his life. And getting a sound alike would be like, maybe could have worked, but you've still got him, so they're gonna use
He
it.
sounds a hell of a lot better than the first story when he first came to Big Finish. And it was like, this is clearly a like 50-plus-year-old man trying to sound like an 18-year-old.
So if I may
Hmm.
insert, since we've walked right into mine,
Yeah.
yeah, I have to say there was a few times when I first started hearing Matthew Waterhouse where it did take me out of it for a moment. I'm like,
Mm.
oh God, that was supposed to be you.
You know what the funny thing is? For me, what took me out is I didn't think that was Matthew Waterhouse.
Yeah,
That
it
sounded
didn't
like
sound.
Colin Baker to me.
Yeah,
There were
actually, yeah. At
definitely a
first, it
few
did sound
scenes
like
where he
Colin
sounded like
Baker.
Colin.
At
For a
first, he did
second, I
sound
was
like.
like, wait, is Colin also here in addition?
Yeah,
Is
at
he
first it
another
sounded like
ghost?
Colin Baker to me as well. As I'm like, why is Colin Baker here? What's going? Oh shoot, that's supposed to be Adric. Oof. Now, again, granted, I will say the dialogue he's given definitely starts working, especially by the end
Mm.
when you get more used to it. But
Mhm.
yeah, it's so hard to let go because he sounds so different now because it's been such a long time
Mm.
and he was
But
not an adult when he was on the show originally. So
do you
it had a lot of time to change.
do you
Mm.
think it would have been better if Big Finish had shelled out for one of those AI voice modifiers to try and sound like he did 40 years
I
ago?
don't know about AI, but maybe a modifier of some kind with decent quality that would change it
Mm.
just a little bit, just a smidge, might have
Yeah.
helped like quite a bit. But again, I'm not entirely sure that would help either. It really depends upon which one you get because some of them out there are beyond brilliant, and you have to probably pay out a pretty penny for that. But that might
Hmm.
help with some characters down the line. And then again, at the
Yeah.
same time, some of them, if you're not gonna pay out the full amount for something really good, that's gonna sound terrible and it's gonna sound obviously fake like half the time. It's like, ugh, never
Mm.
mind. You should
Hmm.
just gone back to the natural state.
Mm. I
So
mean,
it's very hard to say. It's a 50-50 coin flip on those
yeah.
things.
And you would either need to hire a contractor who's familiar with that software, or you would have to give
Mm.
the existing like sound engineers expensive training to become experts in a new type
Mm.
in a
And how to
complicated software.
yeah, you have
Yeah,
to
yeah.
get somebody in there that knows what they're doing, what program they use, and how to hammer it around his particular voice to make it
Mm.
sound like old
Yeah.
Adric, or rather a young Adric
Young
again.
Edric.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I almost think that the funny thing is like, let's, you know, hypothetically, if this was a New Who story, so it had visual, the way I would have got around it, because this is New Who, so it would have been a much further along Doctor, so much time has passed. You could have gotten around Matthew Waterhouse being so much older
Mm-hmm.
by saying that the apparition was
Would
what
have
the
been if he would
doctor's
have aged
mind, yeah,
alongside them.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, like what the doctor's mind has decided that this is what he would look like if he was still alive. This
Because
many
Time Lords can
years later.
kind of sort of halfway peek into the future on person, anyways. So you probably already saw
Mm,
it coming if he ever
yeah,
made it that far.
yeah. So they could have hand waved it away that way, whereas an audio setting it very close to when he died is like, there's gonna
Hmm.
be a little. You have to like go along with it, really.
Mm-hmm.
But it is always gonna
You have to
take
go
you out
along
of
with
it
it
a
a
bit.
little bit, but I will say that as much as it bothered me, especially at first, and especially with him sounding like Colin Baker at first, by the end
Mm,
I kind of felt it. Like it was still not the
yeah.
same voice, but you definitely feel it's actually properly Adric by the
Mm,
end, at least. So I'll give them at least props on that to have written him properly.
mm.
All right, so it sounds like we're up to
So
me.
up to you. Yep.
Yep.
All right, so what kind of bothered me about this is I didn't like that there were basically two different types of ghosts. So you had the holograph ghosts, of course, the holographic resurrected people that are essentially living the Red Dwarf life.
Mm,
And then since that came up already, and then you also have the like apparitions that are caused by the vapors that just happen to like be able to read your mind and whatever. And I think one of them would have made sense for a story. Having both just feels like too big of a coincidence. It's almost like they came up with the idea to have like undead spirits, and then they were like, well, we could do holograms, or we could do this vapor thing, and they were like, well,
Mm.
what about both? And it's both kind of strains credibility to me a little bit.
Because yeah, like they make it clear near the end that it's a matter of all the funky shit they're seeing is basically just them hallucinating because they're sick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like I think it would have made a lot more sense to me if they never had the holograph thing and they were like, the only reason their consciousness persisted is because of the whole like the vapor and the visions and everything, and
Yeah.
just seeing their memories. But that on
Yeah.
top of the holographs just seems like too many different types of ghost in one ghost story.
Mm.
Which, by
Because
the way,
like yeah.
could we have planned this any better for
To be a
Halloween?
Halloween episode, yeah.
Yeah. It actually kind of worked out that we got delayed
Well,
so much.
actually, next
Yep.
week we have a podcast on Halloween.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's gonna be an interesting week that week. I would have spent at least a couple hours that day, I'm sure, just as Jason. But we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
All right.
So,
So favorite scenes.
yeah.
Ooh, now this is interesting because there was, and this is how you can tell this is a story that I like because I was spoiled for choices with this.
Mm.
But I am going. I meant to write the line down so I could get it exactly quoted, but effectively, I think it's in part one. Yeah, where Ether says like, when you get to my age, grief is stitched into living. It's how you wear it.
Mm-hmm.
That is like, that is a brilliant line. Just like, I don't even think it hit me as much the first time, but on the second and third listens, I was like, yeah, um, yeah. That's just like, even, I mean, hell, even at 32, it's like, ugh, I can feel that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where kind of uh you kind of wanted to look at the actor, considering that
Oh yeah.
she's no spring chicken. Ask if
Mm.
she agrees with how she feels about that, if
Oh
she
yeah.
agrees with that line.
I think she flat out in the when I was listening to the interviews, I think she brings that kind of mentality that the story is getting across up, and that she does like the aspect of the story and can relate to it because of her advanced stage.
Mm. All right, Matt, favorite scene.
On a very similar note about having to deal with grief, and by the way, I can relate again recently. I've been
Mm.
keeping an eye on my mother. She just lost a
Mm.
coworker at work that committed suicide this last
Mm.
week. Um, there's a couple of them that near the end that I would have gone for, but in particular, the very last line is literally them asking the doctor what was Adric's last words. After the doctor basically explained how he deals with it, which is not to always show it when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
emotions and grieving and the loss of Adric, etc. To which he replies very solemnly, his last word was doctor, as he then starts up the
Mm.
TARDIS. And this is to hint at the fact that the Adric's last word before killing himself and stopping the other ghosts was to call out the doctor by the name he knew him as, and then hit the switch.
Oh, so that was they were talking about in this. Okay,
Yeah,
I
and
was
this,
sitting because, I mean, as I've alluded to, I was a
I
little
believe
tired.
actually I do
But it's,
recall even I think on Earthshock, I think I don't know that he said doctor, but I know his thoughts were definitely on them and
right,
his
and
lost
I
family
was sitting there. I was
members.
like, did he go back into TARDIS and listen and like observe Adric's death in Earthshock? Like, I didn't think that had happened, so I was a little confused by
Mm.
them asking that. But they're talking about the spirit Adric then.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah,
Although, yeah, it can't be just because they're sick, because multiple people could see the same
Mm.
the same illusions.
well, I think the reason why the Adric one was weird and see-through was because it was actually based on their memories and not actually a finished hard copy in the machine like the others were.
Hmm.
Whereas the others were
Mm.
actually people who had been there a while and the machine remembered them and
Yeah.
had a lot to work with.
Mm.
But yeah, that was at least the what I remember for the Adric Wiggin. That was my that closer was a rather bittersweet pill.
Mm.
So I'm gonna take a different tack. I think my favorite scene was the one where Fabrico is sitting there, is like, well, I could kill Mark, but then I lose the only person who actually treated me with respect, which was Nissa. Or I could
Mm.
save Nissa, but then I definitely can't kill Mark. And and kind of seeing the gears turn and being like, you know what,
Mm.
saving Nissa is more important than killing Mark, and
Mm.
Getting a
committing to
body
that path.
getting a body. Yeah, saving the only friend I've ever had in a very long time is more important than just stealing a body for myself.
Right.
Mm.
So yeah, I really like just watching like how she was thinking in that scene, and her finally coming to the conclusion that I'm gonna go choose on the side of friendship rather than my own selfish desires, even though some would argue she's more than earned the right to get off the planet by any means necessary, but she's
Mm.
going with the person who actually showed her compassion and treated her as an equal. Uh,
Mm.
that didn't need to. So I thought that was a really solid moment.
Hmm.
Mm.
All right, least favorite scenes.
Hmm. God, this one's actually for a change, and that's nice. Probably gonna be fairly hard. So, because I feel like I might have had one in mind, but like it kind of slipped. Let's see. Um. Oh, you know what? That sticks out. Fabrica is constantly warning Nissa, who I forget if she's outright says she's a scientist, but scientifically inclined, all that, very book
Hmm.
smart. Okay, we're in rough weather, and yeah, there's water getting into the boat, but if you try to bucket it out, you're probably gonna fall over. Nissa just keeps going, falls out, and I'm like, ugh. Like I get it. It's like it's very kind of nitpicky to a point, but it's just very, I don't know. There's something about that feels a bit off. That like if it was more like, oh, it was fine to do. She was trying to be like smart about it, and it was just, well, you can't really control nature, so you get knocked overboard anyway.
Mhm.
But
And this kind of had to wear
she's,
the idiot hat for a little while for the plot to
yeah,
progress.
yeah.
Mm.
So it's like, oh, because otherwise, especially because they're very much emphasizing her intelligence in this story,
Hmm.
to have that one moment where it's like, well, we needed to fall out of the boat. How can we do
I,
that?
I do wish there was a little more like if they had kind of leaked what she was looking at, like if we know that she was like, oh shit, I think we're actually dying. I need to take one more reading to be sure. That would kind of explain it. But
Yeah.
combined with the flat delivery, and again, I still maintain that this is the character, not so much bad acting.
Yeah.
But combined with the flat delivery, it's really not communicated that there's any urgency in these readings, and it kind of comes across as, oh, I'm just so absent-mindedly curious that I'm willing to die for no reason, and then
Especially because
and then just happen to find something really important at the end. If there had been any indication that she was getting scared and this was urgent, but she really needed confirmation, I think it would have helped.
Yeah, especially because Fabrica was like constantly being like, "We need to get back.
Yeah.
This is like too dangerous now."
And
To
also,
the point
didn't
that she
the
does finally,
uh,
to the point that she does finally go like, "Oh, okay, I think I've got just enough now," and that's when everything goes to shit.
Yep.
and also didn't the doctor kind of already go, yeah, already aware of it.
Oh, where by the time they get back,
Yeah.
the others have all explained it to the
Mm-hmm.
doctor, so when they actually get there, it's like, "Oh yeah, I already know. They told me off screen while you were
Well, I don't
figuring
even
it
think
out."
they told him off screen. I think he already figured it out by the time they entered the room on his own anyway.
I mean,
That's the way I read it.
The doctor was asleep when Nissa went out onto the
Mm.
lake or whatever, so she couldn't have predicted him that.
Yeah, because like he gets told by like Ether and that what's actually going on, and then they all meet up again
Mm-hmm.
and say it, and he's like, "Oh yeah, they already told me."
Like I'm perfectly fine with people finding out through different routes because
Mm.
that doesn't negate the fact that she was doing something important. But the
Right.
fact that we don't actually know at the time that it matters, and it just seems she's being, willfully obtuse, does seem to be a bit of a flaw.
Actually, no, I take it back. Actually, there was something important to her to do with that because I think her readings also gave her the makeup of what they needed to actually make a permanent cure. Now that I think of it.
Probably did, yeah.
Oh, it probably did, yeah.
Yeah.
Because the tea I don't think, was a permanent cure.
No, it was just
No,
keeping it
yeah, it
from being
was
active.
temporary, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it would like hold it back, but not permanently, yeah.
Yeah.
And that was Alex's least favorite scene, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So then we're on to Matt.
Mine's a little bit later. It's Nessa being caught up in the updrafts with the weird pseudo ghosts, and yeah, just a lot of weird lines coming out of her for a few moments. You're obviously fake too. You're obviously fake too. How is the obviously solid man with a rope tied to him obviously a fake compared to all the other floating people who are just hanging up there?
Yeah, like that was definitely one of those moments where I'm like, I think in between takes she was probably laughing a lot because it was a bit awkward to do. But also like I kind of like for me, I think I let it slide a little because like for me, I think the idea is she's been in this stuff so long that she's starting to lose it a little.
That's what I thought too, but at the same time, there's still.
But
She's also
yeah.
supposed to be a very brilliant person, and she's
Mm.
already out of her rocker.
Yeah, I mean, like
Apparently.
if they conveyed how much time she'd been in there, and it had been like
Maybe yeah, if
ah,
they could have
an
conveyed
hour or
better,
so.
or like how long she's been up
Yeah,
there. Then yeah, you can. It might be
yeah,
more understandable how someone would be loony. Otherwise, it feels like
Mhm.
she's barely been up there
Or
like 5 minutes.
or like
Mm.
if they had even conveyed that she saw other ghosts of people she knows, like that she had
Mm.
seen a Tegan that turned out to be fake, or a doctor that, or an
Yeah,
Adric
yeah,
that
yeah.
was fake, and then
Right,
and then
because
you also see Mark and be like, oh, you're fake too.
Yeah.
yeah, because like they make it pretty clear with Mark that there are ghosts calling out to him by name.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, okay, but we didn't see any of that with Nissa because it's just she falls in,
Mhm.
and that's it. And then she
But
gets
once
saved by
again,
Mark.
we're not seeing enough of Nissa's point of view.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's like we
It just
don't
comes off
know
as
if
awkward. Yeah.
because I mean shit, she'd had plenty of ghosts for them to play with because her entire planet
Yeah.
effectively
The
got
entire
wiped out.
planet, and
So
not to mention
Yeah.
an evil spirit that looks like the master. That
Although,
would probably drive her
yeah.
bonkers.
I was gonna say the only problem is if to bring back her father, you would need to find an Anthony Ainley sound. I don't know
right.
if they've ever recast that version of the Master for Big Finish, but
I think they might have, but I'm not sure that they've kept them on regular.
mhm.
Mm.
I think there's been maybe one or two specials, and that's been about it with that particular master that I'm aware of.
Mm.
Or they might like bring in Jeffrey Beavers or something.
Mm. But yeah, it's just a smack a bit weird. Bill, your least favorite.
So I'm gonna say the scene of the two brothers, Franco and Lucino, talking about their past, and it'd be like, "Oh, I lengthened your name and whatever," because it didn't. I feel like it didn't add anything to their characters really. It definitely didn't add anything to the plot. It was all like exposition, so it's not like it wasn't like an emotional flashback or an emotional moment or anything.
Mm.
It's just these two old guys that are also dead talking about things that happened before the story started. And that doesn't really
Mm.
add anything. If you cut that whole scene, I don't think it would have made any difference.
Yeah, like
No.
I didn't mind the scene, but I definitely get what you mean. Like you
Yeah.
could basically either cut it, or you could have cut some of their other interactions and made this the first interaction they had that we saw.
Mm-hmm.
So, because then it would have made sense. Because okay, now we know who these people are.
Like
But
if that scene led to like them like deciding, oh, okay, we're not going to kill them and we're going to actually like join the doctor's side or something, I could see it, but I don't think that happened. Like,
If the one brother would have actually decided to do something actively against his other brother to stop
right.
all this, yeah,
yeah,
that would have made sense to have that scene then. But otherwise, it just
mm,
feels like unnecessary padding.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it felt like pretty much. You could even argue that about pretty much every scene they have together. Like the first one, it's like okay, we're establishing a dynamic, but then every time we cut back to them, it's basically the same thing.
And it's
Mm-hmm.
pointless to keep repeating, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, it
which I
doesn't
guess.
help that Lucino is just a very annoying character.
Yeah.
But I mean, at least you having a villain, like there's a role in the story, so being
Mm.
annoying is somewhat forgivable, but it's just adds to the annoyingness.
Yeah.
Annoying for annoying's sake.
All right, final thoughts.
Okay. I did say it before, but I will, bears repeating. This I would rather have a TV version of this than Time Flight any day of the
Mm-hmm.
week. Which, to be fair, it's not a very high bar to be better than Time Flight, but
Oh, although I will
um,
say, if this had come out in 1981, it would have looked like shit. I
oh
think I th-
yes, there would have
I
been a
think if
lot
it were
of
a modern episode, it would look brilliant, like just the
oh
way it
yeah,
was written. But
yeah,
in
yeah,
1981, all of the Fabricos would have looked like ass.
yeah,
It
yeah.
depends on who they
Like
got
oh
that
yeah,
week.
like I mean a lot of the illusionary stuff would have had to been scaled back and like they definitely work within the fact that like well this is audio only so we can say whatever the hell we want and people can just picture it whatever however they want. um I would legitimately like of all of these stories that I have heard so far from Big Finish, which comparatively to everyone else in the podcast is still not much, but I'm getting there. um this legitimately feels like one where even if it wasn't about Adric, if they redid, like, tweaked this story for either a special or like a two-parter on TV in a series. This is something that I would like to have in New Who. And honestly, this has the tone that I would like New Who to remember actually exists, because there's very little action in this. Like, the closest
A
you
lot of suspense,
really
though.
get, yeah, like, there's a lot of suspense, but not a lot of like running around everywhere and chasing things and running from being shot. Like, yeah, Mark gets threatened with knives, but that gets taken
That,
out pretty
that's
quick.
that's
And even
solved in
then,
like
there's no
part 2 out of
action-y.
4.
Yeah, and that's like, and again, it's not very action-y, it's just tension building. And then, like, the most action-y thing maybe that happens is still very subdued, and it's Mark swimming out to save Nissa.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, just, I know that's a very old Who tone to have. I mean, like, old Who could be very, classic Who could be very actiony when it wanted to be, but it could also be a lot more subdued, both in visual and in audio. And it's like, it would just be kind of nice once, and so I'm not saying they have to do it all the damn time, but like once every so often, a story with a tone like this would be very interesting. Um, you know, I guess that's just a side effect of the more classic-ish, whether it's outright classic Who or stuff like this, stuff I listen to, the more I'm like, if New Who did something like this, it would be really nice, but they will probably never touch that. I mean, maybe you could say like, It Takes You Away was the closest to something like this that New Who has. I would think, because that is very not action. That's a lot of people standing around talking. Um, like, for the most part anyway. Um, but yeah, just I enjoy this story. I willingly, like, there are some, like, both whether it's an actual set of episodes or a standalone episode or whatever, or even some of the audio stuff we've covered that I've done that I've been here for. Honest to God, this is the one where I willingly listened to it more than twice. To be fair, as I
And
brought up to
and,
Bill before
and
we started,
this is coming from the person who originally refused to
Refused
join in
flat
on
out.
any
oh
podcasts
yeah,
of
yeah, yeah,
audio
yeah.
dramas.
Yeah, I was like, there's definitely a lot of growth in that sense. Because I think my worry initially was that I'm so visual a person that I would get too distracted by everything else around me trying to listen to audio. But I found ways to keep myself occupied while I am, so it works out. But yeah, like, again, like, I brought it up to Bill before we started. Technically, I probably only listened to it 2 more times, because the first time I was listening into it so late that I've slept through most of part 3 and 4 on my
Did
first
did you
watch,
did you have
first
dreams
listen.
about ghosts?
Funnily enough, not ghosts, but a TARDIS did show up in my dream that night. Not when I dozed off then, but when I actually went to bed after. That,
Ah,
sure
so
enough, there was Doctor Who stuff.
it
And
definitely was not that you heard it with your ears and then it got
mm.
subconsciously transplanted, but after the fact.
Yeah. But yeah, that hasn't happened to me in a while, and I think it was just because I was listening to it and then went to bed. Well, like, listened to it, fell asleep, then woke back up and went to bed properly. But yeah, just I really fucking love this. Like, there are some things here and there that could have been tweaked. As with everything, nothing is perfect. Like, there are things that I would change. There are certain things here and there that's like, that could have, like, some of this acting could have used a bit better directing, whatever. Like, and some stuff is just a matter of, These actors are just older. Of course, they're not going to sound the same. Peter Davison sure as hell doesn't sound like he did, but he was also bloody 28 when he started. So fair enough. Like with Matthew Waterhouse, they've aged a lot, so they're not going to sound the same.
I think at this point I've heard enough like old Peter that like his younger voice sounds weird.
But yeah, like I would absolutely recommend this story to anyone. Honestly, I would recommend people watch Earthshock, which I kind of wish I had done this. Watch Earthshock and then listen to this. Because that would be a very interesting experience.
You still won't know who Mark is.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But honestly, it's funny because I didn't. I think initially I was like, "Who the fuck is this?" But honestly, especially by the third listen, I was like, I honestly don't care that I don't know who he is. It's like he's got a decent enough characterization that it didn't bother me too much that I had no clue who he was. But yeah, again, I definitely recommend this to anyone who can get their hands on it. It's definitely worth a listen.
All right, Matt.
For a more concise, cut down version of a final thought, we are rambly tonight. In general, I definitely agree with the idea that this is better than Time Flight was as a follow-up to Adric's death after Earthshock. Again, I feel there's some weird little bits here and there, but I think they are, in reflection, very minor keynotes as opposed to something that completely drags me out of it kicking and screaming every single time it happens. Matter of fact, the Adric voice one in particular, I feel he gets much better as he gets along, and you start to feel it more by the time you reach the end of his story in this episode. So it doesn't bother me nearly as much by the end, but it is noticeable at first. Overall, I think the story is pretty decently written, and I love the character writing. It outside of again of one or two instances, I feel like they wrote the characters pretty much perfectly. Even as we mentioned, some of the flaws in some of the characters is actually something out of that season. So, not much to really argue with there. Generally, really like this one a lot, to be quite blunt. So we'll see about final scores here. Bill.
My final thoughts are that I am doing my best to stay awake. It's
the caffeine crash.
I was ready to fall asleep 2 hours before we started streaming. We've been streaming for 2 hours. I do want to bring up the fact that nobody mentioned that Mark, by my understanding of his lore, should look like a Cyberman.
Oh.
And nobody knows. Nobody they recognize him as not as robotic, but they're not scared of him, which is weird unless he has a human face. I don't understand, and I would have to go back.
He must have a human face because he doesn't sound like a Cyberman either. Because if you had the whole helmet and everything, if you had the whole Cyberman helmet and everything, he would definitely sound like them.
There were a few times in Modern Who where somebody still sounded like the original person, and even a couple times in Classic Who. So I'm not. It could be either way. Is how I'm leaving it. But yeah, I have nothing new to say. Let's move on to ratings.
I was wondering whether there was a Cyberman in the picture
document.
there.
This might be the most confident I've been in not having to really think it over much. Flaws and all, I am still giving this a full 5.
5.0. Matt.
No need for second thoughts here either. Yeah, I'm on the same boat. This is a 5.0. This was really dang good.
Ooh. Okay. So I'm definitely going to be the low ball, but I'm trying to
Gosh
decide
dang
by
it,
how
Bill.
much. I don't dislike the story, but I definitely don't like it enough to give it a perfect score. The question is, I guess, 4.0 or 4.5. 4.0 does feel like the lazy way, which I figured your scores would be close enough that it wouldn't matter if I did the lazy thing. Um, I guess I'll go 4.5. I think it's earned it.
If you
So
went
4
4.0,
point.
I'd start doing the Party Pooper song.
I mean, 4.0 is still a good score, but so
Everybody
the
needs a
average
pooper.
is a 4.83. 4.83 would put this at around number 16 out of 451 things reviewed. It is on par with no audio dramas, but with School Reunion in Modern Who and The Hand of Fear in Classic Who. It is not as good as. Well, it might be the best reviewed audio drama we have.
Dang.
Yeah, it does seem to definitely be the
It
case.
Even
is
better
not
than
as
the other
good.
Cyberman one? That's weird.
What did we rate spare part? I'm assuming you mean spare
Yeah, spare
parts.
parts.
What did we rate spare parts?
I thought that was pretty up there. At least it was in my book. That I can recall.
So we rated that a 4.50.
So it
So
was
it's
a little
up
bit
there, but
lower.
not all the way up top.
Yeah, not too far down, though.
Mm-hmm. So our story is not as good as The Pirate Planet, Torchwood Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, An Unearthly Child, and not counting Tribe of Gum, Doctor Who and the Silurians, School Reunion, or no, you already said it's on par with School Reunion, so it's not as good as those, and it is better than The Armageddon Factor, Dark Water, Death in Heaven, The Robots of Death, Tooth and Claw, The Macro Terror, Time Heist, The Empty Child
Course.
Doctor Dances, Genesis of the Daleks, Dalek, Pyramids of Mars, and The Power of the Daleks.
Some of those
So
were
that's,
close. Honestly,
I mean,
this is in
that's
very good company.
pretty high up there. So I don't think there's
Hmm.
anything to complain about.
And
All
I
right,
mean,
let
yeah,
us.
going by that, it is definitely so far the highest ranking Big Finish story.
Mhm. All right, let us know in the comments what you thought of this week's episode if you've listened to it. Don't forget to like the video if you've listened this far, subscribe on YouTube to get our exports, or follow us on Twitch to get notified when we stream. Next time, we continue to look at Scribe Award nominated Fifth Doctor stories with The Fifth Doctor Adventures, The Perils of Nellie Bly, written by Sarah Ward and starring Peter Davison as the Doctor, Sarah Sutton as Nissa, Janet Fielding as Tegan Jovanka, and George Watkins as Mark.
Some more Mark. All right. See you all next time.
See you then.